Man, what a great college football weekend we all just witnessed. And the crown jewel of what was an amazing college football weekend was the Tennessee-Alabama game. If you weren't watching it this Saturday night, I'm sorry. You missed one of the greatest college football games I've ever seen. And if you don't know, I'm an Alabama fan. So me saying that this was an amazing game when we lost must mean something. So, what happened? Rocky Top toppled the Alabama Crimson Tide. Tennessee beat Alabama 52-49. That's the most points given up in an Alabama loss since 1907. You know who they played in 1907? Sewanee, the School of South, who is now a D3 school, over 100 years ago. Now, needless to say, you've probably all seen it on social media. Tennessee, after they beat Alabama, they stormed the field, they stormed Neyland Stadium, and a $100,000 fine. People are selling turf that they stole from Neyland Stadium on eBay. The uprights, they took them out of the stadium, they paraded them around the campus square, and threw them right in the Tennessee River. Also, they sent seismic tremors on a seismograph. That's what happens when you have a good enough team to beat Alabama. That's what happens when your team beats Alabama. And they deserve it. As an Alabama fan, I know a lot of people might take what I have to say later on in this recording the wrong way, but just stick around to the end. I have important things to say, and they could be misinterpreted if you don't stay for the whole journey. So with that out of the way, why did Tennessee win this game? Well, it's simple. This was Hendon Hooker's Heisman game. It's that simple. Hooker played on an insane level. 21 out of 30 attempts, 385 passing yards, 5 touchdowns to only 1 interception. And you have got to be kidding me. I would say this kid, but Hendon Hooker's 24 years old. I didn't know that. This is an adult man right here. Transfer out of Virginia Tech and is shocking the world right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in New York holding up the Heisman in late November. And on top of that, Tennessee couldn't have won without Jalin Hyatt. I don't know if Alabama's scouting team overlooked Jalin Hyatt or if Jalin Hyatt was wearing camouflage out there, but Alabama's defensive backs didn't see him. They just didn't see him coming. He had 6 receptions for 207 yards and 5 touchdowns. The most in Tennessee history and the most led up by a single receiver against Alabama in the Nick Saban era. That's ridiculous. And that's what describes this Tennessee team. Ridiculous. So, another reason Tennessee was able to win this game is chunk plays. On their passing attempts, they averaged 12.4 yards per pass. That's not good that's not good telling from this Alabama team if they're letting off 12-yard chunks at a time every time Hendon Hooker drops back to pass. Something has to change with the secondary, and Tennessee is able to exploit it. You see Hendon Hooker, he could drop back with confidence, wait for the defense to make their move, and then he would find somebody right down the middle of the field. We saw it time and time again, and that's what Hendon Hooker and this Tennessee offense like to do. They like to speed things up, but they take their time on plays. It's not a quick offense that we've seen. Well, it is a quick offense. They're quick to the snap, but they like to let plays develop. And that's something new that I haven't seen from one of these high-speed offenses. On top of that, they got decent chunks on the run. We heard the offensive coordinator from Tennessee mention how the passing game has been the death of them for the past 2 years. Not that it's been bad, but they've overly relied on it, and it's completely ruined drives. So he mentioned 2 weeks ago that he was going to start incorporating the run game, and they averaged 4.7 yards a carry, which is pretty darn good. If you do that every single time you hand off the ball, you're going to get a touchdown. You're going to get a touchdown drive almost every single time. And on top of that, the number one reason Tennessee won this game was the crowd. Obviously, the team had a huge part to do with it, But if this Tennessee faithful crowd, if the Volunteers faithful did not show up, Tennessee wouldn't have won this game. They forced 4 crucial false starts from the Alabama team. All of those 4 false starts were on third and second down, getting in crucial field position. Alabama's defense looked flustered, and Bryce Young, he seemed uncomfy at times, and that's something we haven't seen from him. Bryce Young usually has a smile on his face or is stone-faced in the pocket, but he looked flustered, especially when he was back in the end zone during the second quarter. He couldn't hear. He could not hear, and that's thanks to this Tennessee crowd. So, with Bryce Young getting flustered, it's time for me to get into why Alabama lost. And if you look at the play calling sheet, or if you even watch the game, you know the number one reason Alabama lost was the penalties. 17 of them. The most in the Nick Saban era. 17 penalties. Gosh. And I had to double check that. I had to look at 3 different sources because I couldn't believe it. I knew there were a lot of penalties during this game, but 17? That's almost laughable. And needless to say, those 17 penalties, they didn't help. One of them was a crucial pass interference, which I'll get into in a second, but it didn't help. It didn't help Alabama at all. Another reason was a slow start from Alabama. I knew Tennessee was going to get up early, but to let it be 21-7 that early, Alabama, they did recover, but letting 21 points up in the first quarter definitely hurt them later on in the game. But it was understandable because they had to get used to Tennessee's offense and Tennessee's defense, and Alabama caught up and matched the tone, but it was too late if you ask me. So, now it's time for the question, should Alabama have won this game? No, they should not have won this game with 17 penalties. But I say should because Alabama had a legitimate shot at winning this game. They had one missed field goal at the 50-yard line. They had one missed 50-yard field goal. If Alabama wins that, if Alabama makes that field goal, I think they win this game. Now, obviously, we don't know if they would have won the game if they make the field goal, but I think it would have happened. I think they would have forced Tennessee in a bad position. Tennessee wouldn't have been in as good a field position. They wouldn't have had the momentum, and Alabama probably walks out of Neyland with a victory. And on top of that, Alabama had another crucial part when they were up. Thing happened when it was 49-42. There was a called back interception from a pass interference call. Kool-Aid McKinstry took it all the way to the 25-yard line from the end zone. And of course, the next play was a touchdown for Tennessee. Those are game-changing plays. And on top of that, Alabama actually had 2 more total yards than Tennessee, which you wouldn't have expected considering how Tennessee was able to easily move the ball from one side of the field to the other. So Alabama was competitive, but you wouldn't expect that from all the penalties, all the sloppy play they had, and how the media has talked about them. The media has made it seem as if Alabama is not Alabama. I know there's probably a better way to word that, but it's the best way to word it. They don't think that this is a Nick Saban team. They think Nick Saban's washed. They think Alabama wasn't ready for Tennessee. They were ready. Oh, well, that's the thing. They weren't ready. They weren't ready for this Tennessee team because of discipline. They might have had a good game plan going in. They might have the players. I will say, on paper, Alabama does have a better team than Tennessee. But it comes down to discipline. And this is something nobody has said about a Nick Saban team. They lack discipline. And it shows with those 17 penalties. So, how did Alabama have a chance at winning this game? Bama should have been blown out. They should have been blown out the way they played. But it is often telling how a team loses. But it is also telling how another team wins. Now, this was an amazing game. I can talk on and on about it. But it is what I mean by it is telling how other teams wins. It can best be explained by explaining the future for Tennessee football and what's going to happen in this upcoming season. So, the future for Tennessee. Now, Volunteers fans, I don't want to burst your bubble at all. Ride this high. enjoy it. Enjoy this high, Tennessee fans. Enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to last that long. This was an amazing game, and you'll remember it for years to come. But at the end of the day, this was a sloppy game on both sides of the ball. You couldn't blow out an Alabama team that had 17 turnovers. That's ridiculous. You had a 21-7 lead at home, and you blew it. You let Alabama and Nick Saban come back. I know it's a tough team to beat, but are you kidding me? On paper, Alabama is the better team, sure. But also, on paper, you had a 65% chance to win the game at the end of the first quarter. And you blew it. You let Alabama back into the game. And I'm worried when you face off against teams that now know you're a threat, like Kentucky and Georgia, you're going to be in trouble. Because you're going to go in with a chip on your shoulder, and then Kentucky and Georgia are going to punch you right in the teeth. That's what they're going to do, because they know Tennessee is not a team to trifle with after beating a team like Alabama. Because when you beat Alabama, there's a target on your back. Look at look at other teams like Texas A&M in 2012. They ended up winning out, but they didn't make the BCS National Championship. Look at teams like Ole Miss in 2014 and 2015. They managed to beat Alabama, but once again, they didn't make it to the postseason. And you can continue on and on with this. The only exception is LSU. Tennessee, I know you might not like this, but you're going to have to pull an LSU. But that LSU team, that 2019 LSU team, it was special. I don't know if you have the pieces that LSU team had. That seemed like a Destiny-type team. And although right now, it's safe to say that you are kind of America's team. You're the underdog team that just beat the evil empire in Alabama. But I don't know if you can pull it off, the miracle season that LSU had in 2019. So, with all that out of the way, Tennessee, they may have gotten a win against an undisciplined Alabama defense, but there is no way they march into Athens and beat a stout Georgia defense. Because I'll tell you what, even though this game is in Athens, and although Nick Saban's team might not be that well disciplined, Georgia's team is very disciplined. Even in their losses, they have shown resiliency. And if they lose to Georgia, they're not going to Atlanta. Now, of course, that's barring if Georgia gets upset twice in the SEC. But if Tennessee, which, by the way, is not going to happen, if Tennessee loses to Georgia, no Atlanta, and thereby maybe then it's basically up to fate if they make the playoffs. But if they don't get to Atlanta, the odds are they're not going to the college football playoffs. So, at the end of the day, is Tennessee legit? I know I just got done bashing them, saying how they're not going to go to the SEC championship. They have a target on their backs against Kentucky and Georgia, because those are tough games. People may overlook the Kentucky game. I know it's at Neyland Stadium, so it's a harsh environment. But you overlook Will Levis, and he will make you pay. Look at Mississippi State. They were 5-1 going into Lexington, and I know Mississippi State isn't of the same vein as Tennessee, because Mississippi State just isn't isn't as good as a team as Tennessee, but they still are worthy to compare, because Mississippi State wasn't expecting this Kentucky team, and Tennessee is most likely going to do the same thing. So, is Tennessee legit? Right now, to put it simply, they are not. But don't judge me. This doesn't mean the Vols can't become legit. They still have plenty of games to prove. I just mentioned the Kentucky and Georgia game, but they also got Missouri, South Carolina. If they went out, they deserve the SEC championship. They deserve the college football playoffs, and I'm rooting for them. I root for every single SEC team, whether people believe it or not. I want every team in the SEC to do well. I want every team in the SEC to go undefeated. Now, obviously, that can't happen, but I truly want it near and dear to my heart. So don't get me wrong, the Vols, they have a great team, and they are deserving of their third ranking. So they just have to prove they can win these games, and they have to prove they can beat Georgia and Kentucky. But with this Alabama game, I think people are overhyping this Tennessee team. And I'm not saying they didn't deserve to beat Alabama. Alabama, they played a sloppy game. but Tennessee just played a little less sloppy, and they were able to pull off the win. So with that out of the way, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.